Washington was on edge today. A palpable tension hung in the air, thick with uncertainty and anticipation. The political climate was volatile, and everyone knew that a single spark could ignite a major conflagration. As a major trade deal with Canada collapsed, the implications of this failure were far-reaching, threatening to destabilize economies and strain international relations. Years of painstaking negotiations, countless hours of debate and compromise, ended in a single night. All the efforts to bridge the divide and forge a mutually beneficial agreement seemed to have been in vain, when Canada abruptly walked away from the table. The reasons behind this sudden departure remained shrouded in mystery, fueling speculation and conjecture among analysts and observers. The news hit the capital like a shockwave, sending ripples of anxiety and concern throughout the corridors of power. President Trump's reaction was immediate and explosive. He didn't mince words, and his response was characterized by a raw, unfiltered anger that caught many by surprise. He unleashed a barrage of anger, a torrent of accusations and condemnations directed at Canada and its leadership. Shattering the usual diplomatic language, the carefully constructed facade of cordiality and mutual respect crumbled under the weight of his fury. This wasn't just another failed negotiation, a setback in the complex world of international trade. It was a rupture in one of the world's most stable alliances. A relationship built on decades of cooperation and shared values was suddenly teetering on the brink. For months, negotiators had worked tirelessly to reshape, to modernize the billions in daily cross-border trade, the intricate web of commerce that connected the two nations. The stakes were enormous. The potential economic repercussions were significant. Auto manufacturing, a cornerstone of both economies, agriculture, the livelihoods of countless farmers and ranchers, and more hung in the balance. The fate of entire industries rested on the outcome of these negotiations. But Canada's message was clear. They were standing their ground. The U.S. had pushed too far. Their demands were unreasonable, their tactics heavy-handed. The White House scrambled to control the narrative, to spin the situation in their favor. But Trump's social media posts set a combative tone, making de-escalation increasingly difficult. He accused Canada of betrayal, of acting in bad faith, and called Prime Minister Trudeau weak and deceitful. A personal attack that further inflamed tensions. The language was personal, a departure from the usual measured statements, a sharp break from diplomatic norms. The kind of rhetoric rarely heard between allies. Trump promised consequences, threatening tariffs and other economic sanctions, rattling markets and boardrooms across North America. Investors grew nervous, fearing the potential for a full-blown trade war. The world is now watching with bated breath, as the longest undefended border becomes a line of economic conflict, a symbol of peace and cooperation transformed into a potential battleground. The partnership that defined a continent, a model of international collaboration, is suddenly fractured. The foundations of this long-standing alliance are now severely weakened. How did it come to this? What series of events led to this dramatic breakdown? Two nations bound by history and commerce, intertwined destinies, now stand on the brink of a trade war. A conflict that could have devastating consequences for both countries. High-pressure tactics, unyielding demands, a refusal to compromise, and clashing national interests have brought them here. A perfect storm of factors that culminated in this crisis. The future is uncertain, the path ahead unclear, with millions of livelihoods hanging in the balance. The anxiety is palpable, the fear of the unknown pervasive. The fallout will be immense. The economic and social consequences could be far-reaching and long-lasting. The question now, the critical question that everyone is asking, can this relationship be salvaged? Can the damage be repaired? Or is a new era of conflict beginning? Are we witnessing the dawn of a new, more adversarial relationship? The stakes have never been higher. The decisions made in the coming days will shape the future of North America for generations to come. The world holds its breath, waiting to see what happens next. The eyes of the international community are fixed on this unfolding drama. The U.S.-Canada trade relationship, a bond forged over decades, is a cornerstone of both economies, a vital artery pumping prosperity through North America. It's a partnership built on mutual benefit and shared values. Billions in goods and services cross the border daily, a constant flow of commerce that fuels industries and supports livelihoods. This exchange represents a complex web of interconnected supply chains, supporting countless jobs and communities, from bustling urban centers to quiet border towns. The economic impact is undeniable and far-reaching. From auto parts essential for vehicle production to lumber used in construction, The two economies are deeply intertwined, a testament to years of collaboration and integration. This intricate network has fostered innovation and growth on both sides. The New Deal, the USMCA, was meant to modernize this partnership, adapting it to the challenges of the 21st century. But the negotiation process was fraught with tension, and at times it threatened to upend the entire relationship. The U.S. pushed hard for greater access to Canada's protected dairy market, a contentious issue with significant implications for Canadian farmers, and stricter intellectual property rules seeking to protect American innovation and technology. Canada, in turn, fought to protect its auto sector and cultural industries, vital components of its national identity and economy, and to keep independent dispute resolution mechanisms in place, ensuring fair and impartial handling of trade disputes. These weren't minor tweaks. They weren't just about adjusting tariffs or quotas. They were fundamental changes, potentially reshaping the very foundation of the trade relationship. The Trump administration's America First approach, with its emphasis on prioritizing domestic interests, clashed with Canada's desire for mutual respect and established rules, creating friction and uncertainty. The talks became a battle over the future of North American trade, a high-stakes negotiation with far-reaching consequences. The risks of failure, a scenario that loomed large during the negotiations, are catastrophic for both nation stability, potentially triggering economic downturns and market instability. What was once a lifeline, a reliable source of economic security and growth, is now a source of deep uncertainty, casting a shadow over businesses and consumers alike. The consequences will be felt on both sides of the border, impacting industries, jobs, and the overall economic well-being of both nations. The collapse wasn't sudden, it was the result of weeks of mounting pressure and eroding trust. Inside the talks, the atmosphere was tense and hostile. The U.S. team, led by Robert Lighthizer, issued ultimatums. Canada felt cornered, forced to accept terms that threatened its core interests. The sunset clause, ending the deal in 5 years unless renewed, was a deal-breaker for Ottawa. Businesses couldn't plan for the future with such uncertainty. In the final hours, Foreign Minister Melanie Joly pleaded for flexibility, but the U.S. refused to budge. Realizing compromise was impossible, Canada walked away. The diplomatic community was stunned. Few believed the integration could unravel. The Trump team underestimated Canadian resolve. This wasn't just a policy failure, it was a breakdown of trust between allies. Even the strongest partnerships have limits. President Trump's response to what he perceived as a betrayal was immediate, almost instinctive. It was a reaction that those familiar with his style had come to expect, yet it still carried a shock value that reverberated across international borders, and incendiary, a verbal barrage that left little room for diplomatic maneuvering. He took to Truth Social at dawn, firing off a series of posts before most of the world had even begun their day. Accusations flew as he accused Canada of betrayal, specifically targeting what he saw as a breach of trust, and calling Trudeau weak, painting a picture of a leader unable to stand up for his own country, let alone negotiate effectively. The posts were raw, unfiltered expressions of anger and disappointment, framing the breakdown as a personal slight, a direct attack on his own negotiating prowess and perceived authority. Later, on the White House lawn, in front of the world's media, Trump threatened sweeping tariffs on Canadian goods, escalating the conflict from words to potential economic action. They will pay, he declared with conviction, promising a tax on Canada, a direct financial penalty for their perceived transgressions. He accused Trudeau of being two-faced, suggesting a lack of sincerity in their dealings, and lacking the courage to make a deal, implying that Trudeau was unwilling to make the tough choices necessary for a successful agreement. Trump's words signaled an all-out trade war, a potentially devastating conflict with far-reaching consequences, sending markets into turmoil as investors reacted with fear and uncertainty to the escalating tensions. The conflict became personal, transcending mere policy disagreements and delving into the realm of personal animosity, closing the door on quick reconciliation, making any immediate resolution seem increasingly unlikely. For Trump's base, this was America First in action, a demonstration of strength and a refusal to be taken advantage of. For businesses and investors, it was a terrifying escalation, a sign of unpredictable and potentially damaging economic policies. The president had thrown gasoline on a diplomatic fire, igniting a blaze that threatened to consume years of carefully cultivated relationships. The largest trading partnership in the world was now at risk, jeopardizing countless jobs and billions of dollars in trade. The uncertainty spread rapidly through the economy, creating a climate of fear and hesitation among businesses and consumers alike. Trump's outburst made compromise nearly impossible, poisoning the well, and making any future negotiations significantly more difficult. The stakes for both nations had never been higher, with the potential for long-term economic and political damage hanging in the balance. Canada's response was calm, but resolute. Prime Minister Trudeau addressed the nation, insisting Canada would not accept a bad deal. He explained that U.S. demands threaten the auto industry, family farms, and economic stability. A deal that creates constant uncertainty is not a deal, it's a threat, Trudeau said. Foreign Minister Joly described the U.S. approach as a list of ultimatums with no room for compromise. Canada's withdrawal was framed as a principled stand, not a betrayal. The message sovereignty and the protection of Canadian interests come first. A bad deal is worse than no deal became a national rallying cry. Canadians, wary of Trump's tactics, largely supported the government's decision. The Trudeau government gambled that short-term pain was worth defending long-term interests. The world took note of Canada's resolve. The country stood united in the face of U.S. pressure. The gamble, that Canadians would endure hardship for sovereignty. In Ottawa, political rivals united behind the decision to walk away. Even opposition leaders agreed. No prime minister could accept a deal that gutted key industries and imposed a 5-year termination clause. The message to Washington was clear. Canada stood together. In Washington, the response was chaotic. Some Republicans, especially from border states, urged a return to talks. Trump allies cheered his hardline stance. Industry groups warned of serious harm to American businesses and workers. The president's actions split his own party and alarmed traditional allies. Administration officials scrambled to reassure partners, but confusion reigned. The world wondered who was really in charge of U.S. trade policy. The economic fallout was immediate. Markets tumbled and the Canadian dollar plunged. The threat of tariffs cast a shadow over industries reliant on cross-border trade. Consumers faced higher prices on cars and groceries. Businesses, built on integrated supply chains, were thrown into chaos. Investment stalled as uncertainty spread. The real cost jobs on both sides of the border. Economists warned of tens of thousands of job losses. Manufacturing regions faced the risk of recession. The pain was real and the future uncertain. As the dust settles, the path forward is unclear. Trump's attacks on Canadian leadership have poisoned the well for future talks. Both sides are entrenched, with domestic politics driving the standoff. The threat of a full-blown trade war looms. There's a slim hope that cooler heads in Washington might urge restraint. This crisis forces Canada to rethink its reliance on the U.S. market. A historic pivot toward Europe and Asia may be on the horizon. The partnership that once defined North America is now in jeopardy. Millions of livelihoods depend on whether leaders can find a way back from the brink. The future of U.S.-Canada trade hangs in the balance.